this all is very interesting. And to understand it, we have to understand what the Aloha spirit is and what it means, and what the life force is, because both of those things are referenced in their actual ruling. The Supreme Court of Hawaii put out a ruling that genuinely had many people, including legal scholars, scratching their heads. This all goes back to an issue around the Second Amendment. Someone was hiking and had their pistol on them. They were charged because in Hawaii, you're not allowed to carry. And he has now taken this up the ranks in the courts. It got to the Hawaii Supreme Court, and they decided to take the opportunity to not just rule on this, but to make some very pointed critiques of the United States Supreme Court and how they've been adjudicating Second Amendment issues. I want us to look at the actual document and the decision that was released by the Supreme Court. They have this whole line of argumentation. Much of it will be very familiar for people who are advocates against the Second Amendment. But then it comes down to the part that is very unique. And the unique part is right at the very end. And it kind of encapsulates or fortifies their arguments, because in Hawaii, they specifically have a card to play that nobody else does. Here it is. It's under the section called the Aloha Spirit. In Hawaii, the Aloha Spirit inspires constitutional interpretation. Okay, so the Aloha Spirit inspires constitutional interpretation. In other words, we can interpret the Constitution through the lens of the Aloha Spirit. What do we do here on the Clayton Tyner podcast? We look at current events and we interpret them through the lens of biblical truth, right? It's that same kind of concept, except it's a Supreme Court actually making or enforcing the law. Let's look back at what they say. When this court exercises power on behalf of the people and in fulfillment of our responsibilities, obligations, and services to the people, we may contemplate and reside with the life force and give consideration to the Aloha Spirit. Contemplate and reside with the life force. Okay, the spirit of Aloha clashes with a federally mandated lifestyle that lets citizens walk around with deadly weapons during day-to-day activities. The history of the Hawaiian Islands does not include a society where armed people move about the community to possibly combat the deadly aims of others. So the spirit of Aloha, it clashes with a federally mandated lifestyle. In other words, what the United States Supreme Court, the Supreme Court of the land, is pushing for all people in all 50 states to fall under, the Aloha Spirit clashes with that. How far are they going to take that if the U.S. Supreme Court gets involved? Is Hawaii actually setting itself up and gearing up to go to war with a state Supreme Court versus the federal Supreme Court? Are we going to have another knockdown, drag out competition between the local and the federal? I don't know, but this all is very interesting. And to understand it, we have to understand what the Aloha Spirit is and what it means, and what the life force is, because both of those things are referenced in their actual ruling. On behalf of the people and in fulfillment of our responsibilities, we may contemplate and reside with the life force and give consideration to the Aloha Spirit. First, I just want you to see, if this all sounds crazy to you, that there is a ruling from 1986, which actually gives all of the people who are in leadership of the island of Hawaii the right and maybe even the mandate to consider the life force and the Aloha Spirit when they are making their rulings. They are right. This is something that was passed in Hawaii. And so let's take a look at that. It says Aloha Spirit is the coordination of mind and heart within each person. It brings each person to the self. Each person must think and emote good feelings to others in the contemplation and presence of the life force. Aloha may be used, meaning kindness, unity, agreeable, humility, and patience. These are the traits of character that express the charm, warmth, and sincerity of Hawaii's people. It says, in exercising their power on behalf of the people and in fulfillment of their responsibilities, obligations, and services to the people, the legislator, governor, lieutenant governor, executive officers of each department, the chief justice, associate justices, and judges of the appellate, circuit, and district courts may contemplate and reside with the life force and give consideration to the Aloha Spirit. So this is an actual, factual, written in law part of Hawaii's culture and their legal governance of their state. And so what do those things mean? What is the Aloha spirit? Some people are going to say it's just kind of a cultural thing. You've got the Aloha spirit, you've got the Windy City, you've got the Lone Star State. It just kind of describes the culture, right? But when you look at the background and how it's actually being considered, what you'll quickly begin to understand is it is rooted in deep spiritual and religious precepts. The last queen of Hawaii, Queen Liliu Okalanana. Wow. So good with names, dude. He's good with names. Queen Liliu Aloha is to learn what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable. That's what the queen said. The queen whose name I can't say, because I have a Lampasas education. Aloha is to learn what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable. Well, that sounds like nonsense. And it also kind of sounds like a lot of religious texts from a lot of religious gurus. And so that's Aloha. The Aloha spirit is to learn what is not said and see what can't be seen and know the unknowable. And then there is the life force. And in Hawaii, this is mana. And mana is the life force that connects to the ancient ancestors and connects you to all of creation, all the way back to the first creators, the man and woman who put it all into place. And ancestry is very important, and human beings are not disconnected from the rest of creation, as in a Christian worldview, where humanity sits at the height of creation and is given a soul that is very distinct and different from the rest of creation. And so it goes without saying that these are religious claims and they are spiritual claims. And when you say the Aloha spirit is clashing with the federally mandated realities of the U.S. Constitution, what you're saying is we are going to take our spiritual and religious ideas that are very different than the spiritual and religious ideas that undergirded the founding of the United States. And we're going to use them as a shield against what the Constitution is asking the broader populace of all 50 states to do. And so how does this make sense to us as Christians? Well, the first thing to understand is that the idea of mana, as it is understood in the history of Hawaii, and the idea of the Aloha spirit is very different than what we mean as Christians when we talk about spiritual realities, or when we talk specifically about the Spirit of God. In 1 John, it talks specifically about testing the spirits that are available to you. He says, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see if they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world. And this is how you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, but every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming, and even now is already in the world." Now, I'm not going to pretend to know like the whole history of Hawaiian culture. I also read in my research for the podcast quite a few Christians in Hawaii who are doing kind of what the Apostle Paul did when he showed up and was surrounded by all the gods of the Greek world, and leveraged that to start a conversation to lead people to Christ. I've seen many people saying what you're talking about with the Aloha spirit and this thing that connects everyone and brings people together. I think what you're actually experiencing is the Holy Spirit of God calling you into relationship with Jesus Christ. So I'm all for that. And I'm all for having a unique culture. I'm in Texas. Texas has a very unique culture. I visited New York City recently. It has a very unique culture. People are proud of the culture that they have. Hawaii's proud of the culture that they have. I'm good with all of that. The question is this a precedent that we're willing to set? Can Texas say, well, we've got the Lone Star Spirit, and because of the Lone Star Spirit, we're just not going to follow one of the amendments to the Constitution? And you guys know some of the amendments to the Constitution are what make our world livable and equitable and thriving and set up for all people's success. Can New York City say, we've got the Big Apple spirit, and so we're just not going to follow some of what the Constitution tells us to do? It feels like a very dangerous precedent that we should be very slow to set. And as believers, when people start talking about life forces and spirits, we should be very slow in accepting that as legitimate for our own life and our own set of beliefs. we should do as John called his church to do and test the spirits. And when you test the spirits, if they are not pointing towards Jesus, then they are not spirits from God. If you enjoyed this clip, make sure you check out the full podcast and subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with all new content. You can also support the channel at patreon.com/Clayton Tyner. Link is in the description below.